Hey guys, Omni here. So last night I saw Scream 5, and that's what I'm going to call it throughout this review because it just makes it easier if I distinguish or have to talk about any of the previous films to try to make sure you guys know which one I'm talking about. And I know I was one of those people that was like, why are they not just calling this Scream 5? Why is it just Scream? It's just following that same annoying trend that we're seeing other sequel reboots being called like Halloween, even though it's the same as the Halloween that it's following. Like, it's just a marketing ploy, a marketing tactic that has kind of annoyed me. But this movie, after you watch it, it justifies the reason and it fits well in line with what the Scream franchise is known for. But for ease of talking about it, I'm going to still call this Scream 5. This entry is brought to us by the Ready or Not duo, Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillett. They brought along their writers as well, one of which has worked on things like David Fincher's Zodiac, the Amazing Spider-Man films, and so forth. Despite the kind of energy and creativity that this duo has kind of presented in some of their past work, they do kind of rein themselves in a little bit and pay just an honest tribute to Wes Craven and his stylings for the previous films that he's directed. This doesn't stand out from the others. They don't try to up the ante in a way that doesn't feel natural to the series. They're not trying to outshine Wes Craven in any kind of way. They really just come in here, and it's kind of a double-edged sword in my opinion, because while I like it because it felt warm and familiar, it felt like another Scream film that we were just kind of sliding back into the skin of. It didn't really have any of that energy or that oomph or excitement that I had coming back into the franchise after such a long break from it. I kind of would have liked to have a little bit of that satire and that parody spirit that they brought to Ready or Not inserted into here. But that being said, and that aside, it's a minor nitpick because this is a pretty dang solid entry in the franchise. Because of that, and it's just an honest love letter to Wes Craven and a lot of the rest of the series. Despite the marketing of this, there is a heavy lean towards the legacy characters there. I want to temper your expectations. They are not in a large part of the film. David Arquette's Dewey is the one that we spend the most time out of the legacy cast. Kind of takes a little while for everybody else to kind of come in. But most of our time, the bulk of our time, the majority of our time, I would say like 75% of the movie is spent with these new characters. And we are following our new lead, played by Melissa Barrera. And again, I'm not going to go into any spoilers. I'm not even going to tell you who these characters are playing, what their deal is, or anything like that, because it can be spoilers. She's joined by many other newcomers to the franchise, such as Jenna Ortega, Jack Quaid, who you might know from The Boys, played Huey over there, Mason Gooding, Jasmin Savoy Brown, Dylan Minnette, Mikey Madison, and Sonia Ben Ammar. They're the new friend group that this movie really revolves around, and a lot of them, for the most part, they're fine as far as performance go. I think Jack Quaid lends a lot of humor in the way that he kind of does with Huey over on The Boys. He brings a lot of that kind of levity in here, and he has a lot of fun with it. I think Jenna Ortega does a really good and strong performance. Honestly, I think our lead, I feel like her performance is just not that interesting, except for these scenes that she shares with Jenna Ortega. And it's those scenes that really kind of pull out some of the emotions, some of those layers, but it never really goes full bore with this character. I think the only other character in here that gets less attention and less time to really kind of give any kind of emoting or anything like that is Liv, played by Sonia Ben Ammar. Everybody else I thought was pretty fine and pretty solid. I think they did a pretty standout job. There's two that I did want to call out, Mason Gooding and Jasmin Savoy Brown, who honestly, out of all the cast, aside from Jenna Ortega's character, I really enjoyed them the most as well. I was honestly pretty surprised by how much I kind of cared about some of these newer characters with such little screen time that some of them got. Some of them, like I said, got more than others, but you know, they did a pretty good job rounding out and fleshing out some of these newer characters, though I wish they would have given them all a little bit more of that same kind of love and attention. Out of the returning cast, I think David Arquette really gets the most to work with in this. He does get the most screen time out of the legacy characters, and I really feel like they really did their best to really show some of the great highlights to Dewey Riley and his character and his legacy and what he brings to the franchise. And I really like that. They leaned into that, and David Arquette came into this and he brought his all and his A game to this role, having been away from it for such a long time. Honestly, I like what they did with them. Neve Campbell and Courteney Cox were both great in the roles in the time that we saw them in. But let's talk about Ghostface. Ghostface in this is just violent, vile, and vicious, man, and I love it. Probably not my favorite reveal once we figure out who the killer is, but I do like what they did with this character and made him feel like a threat and that there were stakes in this film. I really like how they played that up and played the tension in this. Unlike other Scream films, this one is taking itself way more seriously, and it has some humor in it, but while the other ones I would say verge on being a horror comedy, this one very much so leans more into just being a horror. It is taking itself seriously. While there are some jokes, it is definitely not filled with that fun kind of energy that the other films have kind of had. So expect that going into it a little bit as well. And like the rest of the franchise and what the franchise is known for, this does have a meta commentary on the horror genre of today mixed into it. And I think they really do a good job at kind of tackling this transformation of horror over the last couple of years, from this switch from, campy horror into more elevated horror. They talk about things like The Babadook, It Follows, and, Hereditary and stuff like that. A lot more of those A24 style horror films that are more cerebral than just stabby gore fests. And they kind of challenge those fandoms together. They also tackle fandom itself, which is kind of an interesting thing that they mix into this. Not all of it works. Not all of this lands. I do think there's some moments in the film where it does kind of come to a little bit of a slog. It's one of those movies as well, once you kind of get through and feel out the message it's trying to send, it's definitely going to be one of those that I think is definitely going to be divisive, as a lot of things are these days. And that's kind of the point. And that's honestly part of the genius of this film. And it just makes me really want to pay attention to how people react to this coming out of it. There are some things that they do in this. This is definitely going to push some buttons in the wrong ways for a lot of people. And I just want to see how this kind of hits the general audience. Once it gets out there, more people start to see this film. Overall, I wouldn't say this exceeds 1, 2, or 4, which I really enjoyed. I even really enjoy 3. I do think this one is better than 3 in the long run. Definitely as a movie, it has better direction, pacing, tone, themes, and kills, action, all that. I think it does do better than 3. While I do think 3 is definitely a more enjoyable to watch because it is the campiest of all the Scream films, I do have a soft spot for Scream 3, but I do think this one definitely is better than that. I think at the end of the day, if I did have to give this a rating, it'd probably be a 7, 7.5, something like that, depending on my feeling of the day. I did enjoy it in the end, but like I said in the beginning, coming from this duo, I kind of wish they would have brought a little bit more of that Ready or Not energy into this film to kind of give a little bit more of a spark to the franchise once again, and maybe kind of give it a little bit more vigor, if you know what I mean. But at the end of the day, I did come out getting a positive experience of it overall as a fan of the franchise. And I want to know what you guys think. So sound off the comments. Let me know your thoughts down below. We'll carry on the conversation after the video. Feel free to join our Discord as well. Links to that on my socials down below. And before we go, I want to shout out our channel legends: Mandy Sherritt, Ryan Karen, Jason Coleman, Philly Vane, Yori Korskov, Margaret Grace, Mary Bradley, Jeffrey Hale, and Nate Prouty. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. But that's it for this one, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care, everybody.